Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we finally have from Quadeca Scrapyard. I'll freely admit that when I reviewed I Didn't Mean to Haunt You back in late 2022, I did not expect the scale of the backlash, although in retrospect it is rather revealing of the audience. But I'd also like to take some time dismantling some bad arguments made in that project's defense. Just because it's ambitious and experimental doesn't mean it always works, especially compared to the washed out glitch and industrial and art pop from which he was drawing influence, not Trent Reznor or Justin Vernon or any number of indie Bandcamp acts who have been mining this sound for decades and who honestly can be just as hit and miss for me, especially with the reality that if you make experimental art, you build in a higher variance of it just not working for every audience, and expecting critical consensus is asinine. It's not about hierarchies. And most especially, going back to it now, all the problems I brought up are still there. Because I wanted to be fair, I went back to that album before this review. I might have missed something. I wanted to give it another chance. And for as grandiose as some of the soundscapes tried to be, it's still a weirdly off-key and haphazardly mixed slog with a fidgety claustrophobia that doesn't flatter its theme or dynamics, a lot of blown-out percussion, and a very shallow, petulant lyrical arc, all delivered through Quadeca's drippy, over-processed warbling and limited rapping. And of course, I get it, it's the intended atmosphere. I understand what it's trying to do, and why to certain younger audiences there might be emotional resonance, especially if you haven't heard the influences. And hell, at the time, I didn't even call it bad so much as an experiment that just didn't work for me, where I was probably most negative on the content, and I didn't see nearly as many defenses for that. I think that might have been missed on the audiences though for a 1-minute short review, to be polite. But once I started seeing the critical acclaim coming in for this mixtape, a compilation of 3 EPs from last year, plus some new songs, originally going to be 5 EPs, and the last 2 were, well, scrapped for this, heralded as something of a return to form, a little less conceptual, intentionally more ragged, I figured I'd give Quadeca another proper shot. And you know, to his credit, it's probably the most I've liked a Quadeca album. On a looser mixtape feel, he's not beholden to a grand concept he can't really pull off, where the messy emotionality has some space to breathe alongside all his production experiments, venturing more towards burbling hyperpop and the glitchier side of modern hip-hop, kind of reminiscent of that last Injury Reserve album, or maybe even Brockhampton. It makes a lot of sense that both Breakins and Kevin Abstract shows up, the latter who delivered some really nice vocal interplay and harmonies for a great closing track, Texas Blue. Granted, it also explicitly calls back to previous Quadeca albums, as some of these songs were leftovers or were previously linked to them, and that creates an interesting bit of metatext in the heap of crisscrossing pieces thrown alongside each other, fitting the theme of trying and not exactly succeeding to stitch it all together in life and the awkward relationships therein. Less a culmination, more a mosaic where disparate pieces make a degree of sense at a certain distance. And I say all that because if you start drilling into some of the finer details, look a little closer, it's hard to escape the feeling that once again, Quadeca as a rapper and singer might still be the weakest link in his own work, which creates this weird hollowness to this project. I mean, at his best, his emo side and struggles with relationships and self-image, it's probably the most compelling on songs like Pretty Privilege, Under My Skin, and that aching psychedelic side to What's It to Him, as his singing has gotten a little better. And I like the callbacks to I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, that he seems a little more mature this time around. That open communication and growth is why Texas Blue is such a great album closer. But it's also juxtaposed with so much awkward petulance, ambiguous ideas that rely more on detail to flesh them out that's just not there, or a performance that feels kind of underpowered, and returns to a lot of braggadocious bars that have never impressed me. I know some of it's intended to be ironic, self-aware commentary, but he can't really sell it straight or ironic as a presence on the mic, especially when he drowns himself midway in the back of the mix with vocal effects. And it's not like my other issues with Quadeca's production have gone away. It's still very claustrophobic and all the jagged, awkward mastering where the bass will just openly clip the mix multiple times. It's not especially tuneful, even despite the plethora of arranged passages passages that try to evoke some orchestral swell. The mix dynamics never seem to flatter them properly the way they should. I wish these crescendos went off more effectively. And then the majority of the melodic hooks relying on Quadeca's vocal line, which can be, again, very hit and miss. And with no sense of momentum in the track sequencing with a lot of whiplash transitions, the album still finds ways to drag, even despite being shorter with a decent few abbreviated songs. I will say that Quadeca moves more out of the shadow of his influences. The sound feels more like his own now, but again, his choice of clashing tones can be a real mixed bag for me, often lo-fi, grainy, and unflattering as many times as it can be evocative. And it's frustrating because I do hear glimpses. There is improvement here. I understand some of the acclaim, and I think at a distance, this can work. But if I go even a little deeper, the pile-up of production issues paired with the lyricism and performances that feel kind of thin, where the initial experimental results are promising, maybe further testing might be needed. I'm not mesmerized just yet. But you know, if you're curious, this is the definition of a project that works best in pieces. You're certainly not going to hear much else like it. It might just really resonate. I just don't think I'm personally there yet. It happens. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop some comments, and subscribe. I hope that y'all are going to be behaving yourselves in the comments a little bit more than the last time I covered Quadeca. Again, I actually am pronouncing his name properly now, so you can't hold that over me. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping support the channel, or just argue with me on my Discord server, or get albums onto my schedule going forward, link to my Patreon's right over there. But once again, don't feel obligated. Tough times, I understand. Option is available though. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.